Your reaction to how things have proceeded today, an impasse is how Mitch McConnell now describes it between him and Senator Schumer.
Mitch McConnell has a way of framing things in which he really projects a lot. And, his fondest wishes for the House articles of impeachment to be so weak is actually to the contrary. But there he is going off. And notice that there's never any recognition of facing the actual act that the president, the series of events surrounding the withholding of the aid to Ukraine and all that, they don't want to get to that. So they're constantly talking about this, that, and the other thing. And so, it's going to be up to negotiations between Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell as to what the process and rules of the road will be so that Speaker Pelosi can appoint her managers. I think it's perfectly reasonable on her part to wait until we know what kind of rules we're going to have. And if we can find 4 courageous Republicans to ask for the kind of witnesses that could actually possibly exonerate the president, then we're going to get somewhere. But short of that, we would end up with probably 51 Republicans going one way and the Democrats wanting another kind of process.
Yeah, one of the striking things about the witnesses that Senator Schumer's asking for and you Democrats want to hear from is you do not know what they are going to say. Mm-hmm. It is possible that John Bolton won't offer any incriminating evidence against the president at all. And that in that alone, if it was just not incriminating, would it that at this point be helpful to the president in this trial? So it's a fascinating thing for the Republicans to try to stop evidence when they don't even know what that evidence would be.
Apparently they're afraid of the evidence. And of course, we already have Mulvaney saying, quid pro quo, yeah, this is how we do it, get over it. This actions by the president and the people around him to stonewall, this is nothing to get over. So I think Mitch is quite concerned about the witnesses testifying. I hope that we can find some Republicans. For example, I noticed that Susan Collins during the Clinton impeachment said that it's very important to have witnesses. So perhaps she's one of the people that can be persuaded to support having witnesses.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.